nothing. I didn't kill your girls. I didn't kill nobody. I didn't kill nobody.
George Stinney became the youngest person to be executed by electric chair in 1944 in the United States. But 70 years after his death, the tragic truth has been proven, that he was innocent. What really happened in this case? Let's watch this video until the end. George was just 14 years old when he was accused of killing two white girls in a South Carolina town. Betty June Binnicker was 11 years old and Mary Emma Thames was 8 years old. On March 24th, George and his sister, Emmy Ruffner, were playing in their yard when two young white girls came up and asked where they could find flowers. Hours later, the girls did not return home, and a search team was formed to find them. George joins the search team and casually mentions to an officer that he has seen the girls before. The next morning, their bodies were found in a shallow ditch. Both were found to have wounds on their faces and heads. Then the police came to look for George Stinney, who was 14 years old at the time. At the time, his parents were not at home, while his younger sister was hiding in the family's chicken coop located behind their house in Alcaloo, an isolated mill town in South Carolina. From the visit, the police handcuffed George and his brother, Johnny, and took them away. George was immediately arrested for the murder and interrogated for hours without his parents or a lawyer. At the time, police said George confessed to killing them both because Betty June refused to go on a date with him. The sheriff later claimed that George confessed to the murder, although there was no written or signed statement. George's father was fired from his job, and his family was forced to flee amid threats to their lives. On March 26th, the mob attempted to lynch George, but he had been moved to a prison outside the city. On April 24th, George Stinney faced the sham conference almost alone. No African Americans were allowed inside the courthouse, and court-appointed attorneys failed to produce witnesses. Prosecutors presented the sheriff's testimony regarding George's alleged confession as the only evidence of his guilt. The trial lasted 2 hours and the all-white jury deliberated for 10 minutes before finding George Stinney guilty of murder, and the judge sentenced the 14-year-old to death by electric chair. At the time, 14 was considered old enough to be criminally responsible. Meanwhile, his lawyer, a local political figure, decided not to appeal. The court decided to execute George in about 3 months. There is some debate about this outcome, particularly regarding George being too young to be in the electric chair. In addition to the electrodes being too big for his feet, the straps didn't fit his body properly, so George had to sit on a Bible to fit into the chair. However, these doubts were ignored and on June 16, 1944, George Stinney was executed. He became the youngest person to be executed. New facts in the case prompted District Court Judge Carmen Mullen to overturn George Stinney's conviction in 2014, 70 years after the execution that ended his life. A few years later, historian George Frierson began to study the case. He also met George's former cellmate, Wilfer Hunter. He said that George Stinney denied the charges against him.
"I didn't do it. Why are they killing me of something I didn't do?"
Wilfer said, repeating what George had said. In 2009, attorney Matt Burgess planned to file a report from Stinney's family members. He said,
"We felt like something needed to be done about this."
Stinney's family finally dared to speak up and say that George's confession was forced and that he had an unheard-of alibi. That alibi came from his sister Emmy Ruffner, who is now 77 years old. She said that at the time of the incident, she and George were watching their family's cows graze near the railroad tracks near their house when the two girls rode past on their bikes. She just kept quiet at that time because she was afraid. In early 2014, the George Stinney case experienced rapid developments. At a hearing in January, Stinney's family demanded a retrial. Judge Mullen heard testimony from George's brother and sister, a witness from the search party that found the body, and experts who questioned the validity of George's confession. George Frierson says, "There was little blood at the ditch, evidence that the girls were killed elsewhere."
A 95-pound boy can't carry to dead bodies a quarter-mile or more. Those girls were beaten to a pulp. There would have been a lot of blood.
A child forensic psychiatrist, Amanda Sales, testified that George's confession should never have been believed. The confession given by George on or about March 24, 1944, is best characterized as coerced, compliant, and false. Amanda stated that the confession was unreliable. Judge Carmen Mullen, who presided over the retrial, focused not only on whether George was guilty or innocent, but more on whether the previous legal process was fair. According to her, sentencing a 14-year-old child to death within 83 days was a cruel and unusual act. Finally, on December 17, 2014, 70 years after his death, George Stinney was found not guilty. Although the verdict was overturned, not everyone believes that George Stinney is innocent. The victim's family still believes that the 1944 decision was correct. Carolyn Jettings, Betty Binnicker's niece, said she was always told Stinney was the culprit, but for many people, including George Frierson, for an activist who fought the case for 10 years, the 2014 verdict was a victory.